It's a pleasure to present to you a new company called SightGlass Vision, which is, we believe, and we hope, can revolutionize myopia care. As Gil mentioned at the session overview, myopia is exploding. Globally, it's skyrocketing and on track to have 5 billion myopes by the year 2050. And the issue with high myopia in particular is that it can lead to visual impairment. And so while millions of patients are losing vision today because of complications of high myopia, that's on track to be hundreds of millions of patients by the year 2050. And so there's an emerging field known as myopia control that really aims to reduce the progression of myopia in children, while today there are no on-label treatments. People are beginning to adopt off-label treatments such as atropine eye drops or orthokeratology lenses. And unfortunately, these are in many cases painful, they're marginally effective, and can carry some risk of vision impairment and even blindness. So there's new technology needed in this emerging field, and we're excited to be one of the innovators in it. SightGlass has proprietary ophthalmic lenses that are worn just as regular spectacles, and they've been shown in a number of clinical trials to be safe and to reduce the progression of myopia. And from a commercial perspective, one thing we're particularly excited about is that a relatively modest investment for a non-invasive device will be able to fuel a launch in a very large market that we think has multiple billion-dollar potential. So as you can see in this chart, this is published last year in ophthalmology from Brian Holden's group in Australia. This is the increasing epidemiology of myopia. So in the year 2000, there are about 1.5 billion myopes. That's on track to be 5 billion myopes by the year 2050. And 1 billion of those will be high myopes. And one of the big challenges is that high myopia causes, in many cases, vision impairment. And from this study, also published last year in JAMA Ophthalmology, 38% of high myopes, that's defined here as more than 6 diopters, will suffer vision impairment. That can be myopic retinopathy, choroidal neovascularization, lattice degeneration, retinal detachment, glaucoma, and cataract, all of which are elevated in patients with high myopia. And so as you can imagine, this is leading to a substantial cost to the healthcare system and a rising cost as well. So when children are first born, their eyes are hyperopic. That means that the eye is too short for the refractive power of the cornea. And during the first decade of life, through an absolutely normal process called emmetropization, the eyeball lengthens. And so once it reaches emmetropia, that means that the distance between the cornea and the retina, the axial length, matches the refractive power of the cornea for that particular patient. But what happens in myopia is that the eyeball keeps growing, and that axial length keeps going beyond emmetropia into myopia, so that the cornea essentially focuses the light in the center of the eyeball rather than on the retina. So you can think of myopia as the failure of axial length to stop growing once it reaches emmetropia. So SightGlass has proprietary lenses that are patented that provide peripheral blur and reduce peripheral hyperopia, and these are thought to be the major causes of myopia progression. This is an optically driven process. That means myopia is caused by what we look at. And so by altering that image formation in children with our proprietary lenses, we can change the course of myopia. And so this is an overview of our clinical development program. The pilot study was called PALM with 20 kids. There's a proof of concept study known as ELM. Spruce is a bridging study using our commercial manufacturing process, and Cypress is what we're naming our planned pivotal study for global regulatory approval. And what you can see in this data slide from our first pilot study, which is PALM, is that kids wore a control single vision standard ophthalmic lens in one eye, and what you can see over the 3-month period is myopia continues to increase, and you can measure this by both refractive error as well as by following the axial length measurement over that time. Whereas in the contralateral eye, patients wore our myopia reduction proprietary lens, and what you can see on the left-hand side there is that the myopia is stable over that same study period. In the graph to the right, that data is quantified, and you can see that it's a greater than 90% reduction in axial length change during that study period. And so in summary, there's an emerging field known as myopia control, and this is really built around trying to reduce the burden of the myopia epidemic, which is on track to cause visual impairment for millions of people. While there are some current solutions, they are marginally effective and carry some potential safety concerns. Our lenses, which have been shown to be safe and effective in multiple clinical trials, will go on to study in a pivotal study. And SightGlass Vision is a new company. We're currently raising Series A funding that will fund that pivotal study and global launch. Thank you so much.